Hey everybody, thank you for joining me today. So today's video, we're going to continue on our new series of using the black watercolor paper with the white gouache. And I have this beautiful stamp from the ton. I want to say it's the close-up peony, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm inking it up. I'm going to wind up inking it up twice. And we're going to be doing the white heat embossing. And I will say, with this particular paper, the embossing on it, it feels different. Like a lot of times when you emboss on like Bristol or Nina, the embossing powder has sort of like a raised feeling. And though this one has that, it's not as raised. It's almost more like a textured feeling. Because it's sometimes it's more rough than it is smooth. You probably would want to do like maybe 2 passes on the heat embossing. It's up to you. I think I just inked twice, so that way making sure there was definitely enough Versamark, and then putting on the powder. And you can see here, this is what it looks like after the powder. And we're going to heat up our tool, get it nice and warm. You always want to get it warmed up. But even if you don't, with this particular watercolor paper, I find that the paper doesn't warp. I don't know if it's because of the weight of it and I guess the thickness of it being the watercolor paper. It's definitely interesting, and I'm liking figuring this out, if that makes sense. I actually found, when I found this paper, some Bristol watercolor paper, not watercolor, Bristol paper, that might be fun to actually color on as well. So I'm using some water from our, actually this isn't from our last one. What happened was, I did 2 of these card fronts, and I did one off camera, and then I did the second one and wanted to share with you, on camera while I basically colored this in. And I will say this, in using these, I love almost the chalky look that it creates. It really has a nice look. So what I'm going to do is, since I'm just getting started, I'm going to go ahead and let the music play, and we'll color this in. Now what I try to do is, wherever they're crossing over each other, I try to put more of the concentrated white gouache there, and then drag it out or pull it out in more of the shadow areas. You will see that by the end, I kind of start going over different areas, and you can totally do that. That's the wonderful thing about watercolor, and that is something with the gouache, that when you use water or you're using a lot of it, it tends to change the opacity, obviously, of it. It's not as thick, so it's not going to cover the same way that maybe regular watercolor paints would. So I'm going to go ahead and start my music, and I'll be back when it's time to put these into cards. Okay, so as we start to finish out the center of the flower, and I will say, obviously, with a big one like this one, it does take a little bit more because it's really a large area that you're coloring in. But what's interesting with gouache is that while you're putting it down, if you've added water, it always looks very bright white. And then because of the water being mixed in, it kind of starts to fade back. And so it doesn't really stand out as much. But I'm trying to go into areas to help give it a little bit more definition, some interest, so that way it's not all reading as one flat image with just, these different gray tones. And sometimes it looks like it's covered the entire area by using, the same, basically the same technique on the whole thing. But I am really liking how these are coming together, and they're just really pretty. And I could really just keep going. Sometimes you just have to force yourself to stop, you know what I mean? Like you can almost, really, really get carried away type thing, because you feel like just a little bit here, a little bit there. Oh, I'm not adding much. I'm not doing too much. And the next thing you know, you've almost done a whole second layer on the entire front. But it's just so pretty. So the little bit of white gouache that I had left on the palette that I'm using, which is just a laminated white sheet of paper, we're going to go ahead and get this completed. Now, I will say what I did is I tried to let it dry overnight. I wind up taking some of the Tim Holtz white picket fence spray. White picket fence spray to create the splatters, and it does dry back some, so I would suggest that you try and get your project to be a lighter, or to completely dry, and then use the splatter drops, because sometimes it's kind of absorbed it instead of the splatters really standing out on top. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. Please hit the like, subscribe, and share button. And of course, when you subscribe, hit the bell so that way you get notified whenever I upload new content. And I'm going to try and remember to get the link to the watercolor paper, because it's awesome paper. Buy it, buy it, buy it. You won't be disappointed. Thanks again, you guys, and I hope you have a great day.